part 1 of 14. Welcome. Today we will journey to Bougainville Island to uncover the hidden secrets of the Japanese defensive system known as the Hornet's Nest, and understand why it remained impenetrable to American forces. Over the course of a month, more than 30,000 shells were fired at this fortification, and yet the Japanese held their ground like a rock. Why, despite such firepower, did they not surrender? At the same time, on the other side of the world, a secret trade agreement with the Japanese was signed simultaneously with the preparations for an assault. Was this treachery or part of a larger plan? It is not just a historical battle at stake, but the fate of strategies and interests that determined the course of the Pacific War and the lives of thousands. In this video, we will gather all the scattered facts and reveal who was truly orchestrating this bloody mosaic. Are you ready to see what is hidden in archives and on the battlefield? Then let's begin. In the depths of the Pacific Theater of Operations, where each island chain turned into an impassable battlefield, one of the most complex and tangled pages of World War II was unfolding. At the center of this chaos was a fortified citadel known as the Hornet's Nest, a massive camouflaged bunker system that seemed alive, resisting every assault and every attempt to breach its impregnable walls. This system, created by Japanese engineers with astonishing precision and secrecy, was a complex network of tunnels, bunkers, layers, and shelters arranged in such a way that no aerial reconnaissance or artillery fire could accurately reveal its scale and internal structure. It was like a labyrinth, where every turn could be the last for an advancing soldier. Underground bunkers connected by intersecting lines of fire allowed defenders to fire upon any approaching enemy. These fortifications protected Japanese soldiers not only from external strikes, but also created an internal environment where each tunnel and layer became part of a living resistance system. Inside these underground labyrinths were well-armed and prepared defenders whose faces were hidden behind camouflage masks and concrete, and whose hearts beat with iron will. Their training was impeccable. They knew every crack, every protrusion, every trap within the Hornet's Nest system. The defensive structures were not just fortresses, but part of Japanese tactics of waiting, meticulously planned and carefully concealed. When the Americans encountered these impassable fortifications, they experienced the full force of modern technology and tactics. They had powerful artillery, heavy aircraft, and infantry armed with the latest weapons. They made numerous attempts to break through the defenses, attacking from the air, shelling from afar, storming from the ground. But all their efforts only resulted in temporary successes, behind which a new wave of Japanese counterattacks lurked. Each attack resembled a game of cat and mouse, with Japanese defenders holding their breath and patiently retreating behind another fortified line, only to emerge from cover and strike again. Their bunkers, like living fortresses, held back the onslaught, turning every microscopic advance by the Allies into a bloody struggle. The offensive began in early January 1944. It was a time to defend the strategy that seemed capable of prolonging the resistance of Japanese forces. American troops, armed with new types of weaponry and prepared for a decisive assault, began concentrating their forces. Heavy artillery was used, bombers dropped bombs with double the force, and infantry moved ever closer to the boundaries of the labyrinth. But despite their overwhelming power, they faced an insurmountable wall of impenetrable fortifications. Every advance was bloody and exhausting. Each meter gain came at a tremendous cost in lives. Inside the Japanese defenses, in their tunnels and layers, were not only armed defenders but also strategic minds capable of holding the line against all odds. This struggle held particular significance. Time was passing, and the Japanese Hornet's Nest system remained unconquered. Destroying this fortress would mean not only eliminating specific strongholds, but also achieving an important strategic breakthrough that could accelerate the Allies' progress toward the final liberation of these islands. The battle for this piece of land became a symbol of defiance, courage, and technological might. Every minute, every second of fighting within the labyrinth was a testament to how thin the line is between success and failure, victory and defeat. But the main question looming over this battle was, could new types of weapons, especially flamethrower tanks, break through the Japanese Hornet's nest defenses? Is it possible, armed with flamethrowers inside armored vehicles, to overcome the enormous wall of concrete and steel? Could these modern machines become the decisive weapon in the brutal conditions of the Pacific theater? Because, as experience shows, even the most powerful artillery barrages and air raids are not always capable of destroying underground fortifications if well-prepared defenders are waiting inside. The urgent question was, could these latest means destroy the meticulously planned Japanese system? Or would the internal fire emanating from armored vehicles become the key to victory, determining the outcome of this bloody confrontation? And that is where the main suspense lies. The key challenge for commanders and engineers, whether the use of firepower within flamethrower tanks can become the breakthrough strategy that changes the course of the battle. Is this technology the key that will open the gates to victory in the brutal and relentless Pacific theater? Or, conversely, will it turn out that even the most advanced developments are merely another layer of illusion, hiding the terrible truth about the cost of this war? Time will tell, and the future will decide who emerges stronger in this brutal game of survival, where the stakes are not only victory, but the fate of millions. During the Great Trials, when the shadow of war cast over the entire planet, the United States faced the necessity of seeking new, insurmountable obstacles to strengthen Japanese positions. At that moment, when traditional methods of combating bunkers and fortifications became increasingly ineffective, American engineers turned their attention to fire, to a fiery weapon that promised to change the rules of the game. This moment marked the starting point for the creation of a unique, yet extremely complex and dangerous technical solution, which was meant to counter Japanese tactics based on massive, well-concealed fortifications that seemed impregnable. In the early 1940s, amidst the backdrop of political and military strategies, American designers, inspired by the successes of their German colleagues, introduced a model that was to become a weapon of last resort, a portable flamethrower. This development, designated the M1, was based on a concept borrowed from German engineers. Visually, it resembled a cross between a pistol and a miniature artillery unit, a small but threatening weapon capable of projecting a stream of fire that could destroy even the most resilient fortifications. Inside its casing were two gasoline tanks filled with fuel, compressed gas, and a manual nozzle equipped with an ignition system. All of this was connected by a complex fuel and flame delivery system designed to allow the operator to deliver a fiery strike against enemy positions. But, as often happens in the history of weaponry, theory significantly diverged from practice. Initial tests revealed that the M1 model was far less reliable than expected. In damp weather, when clouds covered the sky and the air was humid, it became simply unusable. Ignition would fail intermittently, sometimes at the worst possible moment, which could end in tragedy for the operator. Despite its seemingly compact size, the device was heavy, over 27 kilograms, making it unwieldy in hand, and its carrying case became a challenge for every soldier. On the battlefield, where every second counts, slowness and bulkiness became not only disadvantages, but also life-threatening risks. Nevertheless, despite all technical imperfections, the potential of this weapon was evident. American strategists increasingly looked toward the possibilities opened by fiery streams, the ability to literally burn Japanese bunkers, destroy cover, and obliterate fortified defensive lines, which seemed capable of turning the tide of the war. Part 4 of 14. In a situation where the Japanese were strengthening themselves in underground structures, creating entire labyrinths capable of withstanding even bombings, flamethrowers represented a potentially unique solution. There was no doubt, if it could be brought to a reliable state, it would radically change combat tactics. But the Japanese, whose expertise in defense was recognized worldwide, quickly understood the threat. Their intelligence and own developments allowed them to identify the source of danger: American flamethrowers. And the response was swift. Japanese forces began active measures to destroy the operators of this weapon. The enemy understood. Each destroyed carrier was one step toward preserving their fortifications. Thus, a real hunt began. Japanese snipers, ambushes, sabotage groups, everything was aimed at strengthening the fight against this new type of weapon. Their tactics included special measures for the disposal of flamethrowers, making their use increasingly risky and complicated. At the same time, behind the lines, American engineers did not sit idly by. Leading research institutes began work on integrating flamethrowers into larger systems, into tanks, armored personnel carriers, even aircraft. The idea was to make the weapon more reliable, more mobile, less vulnerable to weather conditions and enemy attacks. By 1943, when the war was already depleting the resources of both sides, new projects were launched aimed at eliminating technical shortcomings and creating mass-produced models. Time showed that the development of this weapon was not just an experiment, but a struggle for technological superiority. And now the main question arises: can modern American engineering overcome all these technical obstacles? Can it ensure mass production of reliable, safe, and effective flamethrower systems capable of changing the course of the war in the Pacific? Science and technology, despite their achievements, face an extremely complex challenge. The question of whether it is possible to turn this weapon, which in theory promised to break through fortified defensive lines, into reality, remains open. This is the core of the main storyline. Can the development of flamethrowers become a turning point in the fight for control over fortified positions? Can this technology, initially created as an extreme measure, become a key element in strategic victory? Time will tell. But one thing is certain. In a war where every second and every inch of land matter, fire and death go hand in hand. And the story of this weapon is a story of how human ingenuity confronts the harsh reality of war, where even the boldest ideas require practical testing, and every new decision is a bet on victory or defeat, on life or death. Deep within the harsh years of World War II, when every minute on the front could be the last and every decision was life-changing, military engineers and tacticians sought new ways to break through impregnable fortifications and gain an advantage in battle. Among the many ideas that emerged in the fog of military offices, one, installing flamethrowers inside light tanks, became truly unusual and risky. A look into history shows that it was precisely in 1943, amid the bloody battles in the Pacific, that officers of the 39th Tank Battalion proposed a radical solution: to embed a flamethrower, a device capable of producing streams of fire, directly inside the turret of the light tank M3A1 Stuart. This idea seemed both brilliant and insane at the same time. It promised capabilities previously only dreamed of, firing upon fortified positions while remaining inside an armored shell, protected from bullets, shrapnel, and even explosions. But could this concept truly become a reality? And what obstacles did the technology face in bringing such an ambitious plan to life? Imagine the scene. Late at night, the flickering of a few dim lamps, the quiet hum of machinery spreading through hangars and workshops. On the table are blueprints, prototypes, photographs. The focus is on small launch openings, so-called pistol ports, barely noticeable slits through which flames were supposed to be expelled. The idea was to fire flames or incendiary mixtures through these openings, creating fiery tails capable of destroying enemies hiding behind fortification walls. In theory, this approach would not only reduce crew casualties, allowing them to fire from cover, but also significantly complicate the enemy's task, as attacking forces would face a fiery curtain that could encircle them from all sides. It seemed that forward-thinking engineers had found a way to outsmart gravity, the laws of physics, everything that prevented them from using fire as a weapon inside armored vehicles. But in practice, this idea faced a series of insurmountable technical difficulties. Inside a light tank, a tiny space where every millimeter counts, installing a full-fledged flamethrower capable not only of hitting targets, but also of not destroying the vehicle itself seemed almost impossible. Equipment had to be compact, lightweight, yet powerful enough to produce a fiery impact. And what about the heat, which could instantly turn the interior compartment into a blazing oven? How to ensure crew safety, preventing internal fires, since even a small mistake could lead to catastrophe? And most importantly, how to position these devices so they wouldn't interfere with control, firing, and other vital systems. The answer to these challenges was the idea of adapting existing flamethrower units, which were used in infantry for creating smoke screens or fire barriers. Their sizes had to be significantly reduced to fit inside the tank's hull. The engineers set to work. They developed miniature versions that, although they lost some of their power, could operate within confined spaces. During 1943 and 1944, experimental models underwent testing on a larger, more versatile M3A1 tank platform. Laboratories and field tests confirmed initial assumptions. The idea works on paper, but in real combat conditions, many new problems arise. Heat, vibrations, the need for constant maintenance, the risk of fire, and most importantly, the inability to fully control the flames inside a limited space. All these factors constrained the engineers within the bounds of reality. Nevertheless, plans were not abandoned. Time was passing, along with combat missions that demanded new solutions. It was planned to deploy such tanks in upcoming operations on Bougainville, an archipelago where Japanese fortifications reached their highest defensive points. There, amidst forests and trenches, conditions were created in which standard attack methods proved insufficient. Under such circumstances, the prospect of fielding vehicles capable of firing from within seemed very enticing. In theory, these tanks could break through enemy defenses, creating a fiery curtain that would shatter the resistance of fortified positions. The idea appeared revolutionary. Could it change tactics? Was it worth risking technical difficulties for such a prospect? The question facing command and engineers remained open. Could internal constraints caused by limited space and technological requirements make this concept practically feasible? And here lies the main conflict, hiding not only a technical challenge, but also a strategic dilemma. Should they take the risk to implement a technology that could change the course of battle, or stick to the old ways, knowing that the enemy does not wait and exploits every weakness? Could the technical limitations, so characteristic of small sizes and complex devices, become an insurmountable obstacle? Or was there a chance for breakthrough precisely in these difficulties? The question that troubled both engineers and tacticians remained open, until experiments showed that reality is much more complex than theory. But it is within this complexity that the potential for revolution lies. Still, one last, most crucial question remains. Can this technology, based on using flames inside armored vehicles, change the rules of the game? Could such an idea, despite all its difficulties and limitations, become a breakthrough that forever alters combat tactics? Or will it remain just a bold but unfeasible concept, forgotten in history? Time will tell, but one fact remains undeniable. Every great revolution in military technology begins with an idea that seems impossible. And it is precisely in these impossibilities that the spark of future victories and defeats is hidden. In the silence of the early morning, when the first rays of the sun just begin to peek through the clouds, the first traces of a new era in tank construction and military tactics appeared in the area, where only recently there had been silent emptiness. These traces, heavy, metallic, covered in mud and dust, were brought from a distant factory where engineers like alchemists transformed steel and fire into weapons of the future. In October 1943, when the war in the Pacific was intensifying and battles for islands were becoming increasingly fierce and bloody, it was then, during a time of crisis and hope, that new samples of weaponry were first delivered to the combat zone. These were modified flame tanks, experimental machines designed with the aim of changing the rules of combat, breaking through Japanese fortifications, and altering the very tactics of warfare. In those days, when the outlines of New Georgia Island, located off the coast of New Caledonia, appeared on the horizon, specialists and commanders understood It was here, in these lands, that the most ambitious ideas would be tested. And so, on one cool morning already filled with anticipation, engineers unloaded the first modified tanks. Their reinforced and upgraded armor, shining under the sun's rays, seemed to symbolize a new era. The whole world knew that these machines were the result of long, painstaking work. For several months, engineers worked tirelessly, fixing every detail, every crack. But now, with the equipment at the front, the most difficult part began: testing in real combat conditions. The first thing that caught the eye was the atmosphere of anticipation and tension. On the field, where commanders and observers from allied countries, United States, Australia, New Zealand, gathered, silence reigned. Time was critical. Time, the enemy that could not be wasted. It was planned that the first combat operations involving these new tanks would take place as early as November. But everyone understood, the equipment had not yet passed all necessary tests. Its designs, though seemingly sturdy, revealed their weak points. Inside the cabin, amidst the noise and clatter, calls, discussions, and quiet expressions of disappointment could be heard. Witnesses, engineers observing the mechanisms, showed that fuel leaks were a constant problem. They appeared in the most unexpected places, creating the risk of serious accidents. Tank operation was no simple matter. Inside the cabin, hot metal smell, engine noise, the squeak of metal, and hypnotic flickering of instruments. During training, major flaws were identified that needed to be addressed as quickly as possible so that the equipment could go into combat. By the late 1930s and early 1940s, the world was on the brink of a new catastrophe. The war was turning into a bloody tapestry where each battle became decisive. Under such conditions, every new development had to pass the test of time and fire. Engineers, like surgeons, carried out modifications, shortening the hull to increase maneuverability and strengthening the armor to survive in the most dangerous zones. During these months, when storms of battle raged on the front lines, they worked in the shadows, often through the night, sparing no effort. Their hands were tools of change, their minds engines of revolution. And so, by the beginning of the 2000s, when it seemed that everything had already been accomplished, the first combat tanks with flamethrowers entered the 754th Battalion. At that moment, as if in anticipation of a new era, everyone understood. This was not just machinery, it was a symbol of hope, an attempt to turn the tide of the battle. The first deployments to Bougainville Island became a true test. There, amid jungles and narrow trails, the new machines faced reality for the first time. They demonstrated their effectiveness, breaking through Japanese fortifications, dispersing enemy infantry, and instilling terror in the opposition. Accounts from those who fought in the initial battles show that these tanks, despite their flaws, possessed the ability to make unexpected breakthroughs and lightning-fast attacks, tactics previously unseen in the Allies' arsenal. Their flamethrower effects ignited Japanese bunkers, and the flames emanating from their barrels seemed to symbolize new methods of combat, new possibilities. But the question facing the command was not only about the effectiveness of the machinery, but also its ability to ensure strategic continuity. Could these experimental vehicles change the balance of power? Could they deliver the breakthrough long awaited? Or would they remain merely another experiment, a bright but fleeting illusion? At this point, when facts show that the technology demonstrates combat capability, the main question arises: will these innovative tanks ensure the breakthrough of Japanese defenses? Or will their effectiveness prove insufficient to turn the tide of the battle? Time will tell. But one thing is already clear. These machines are not just metal and fire. They are a symbol of hope, an attempt to change tactics in the Pacific theater, an effort to alter the course of history. Their fate lies in the hands of commanders, engineers, and soldiers who believe that new technologies are the key to victory. How things will unfold depends on many factors: the quality of modifications, tactics of deployment, and whether these machines can become powerful weapons in the hands of the victors. And finally, the only remaining question is one that troubles everyone observing this process. Do commanders expect such innovations to completely change the rules of the game? Do they hope that these flamethrower tanks will become the decisive factor that will turn the tide of the war in the Pacific? Or are they merely temporary solutions, another stage in a long chain of technological experiments? As always, the truth is hidden somewhere in the middle, and only time, its tests, and the blood of soldiers will reveal whether these machines mark the beginning of a new era or just an intermediate step on the path to victory. At dawn, when the first rays of the sun had yet to pierce through the cloudy sky, fierce battles began on the shores of Bougainville. The silence, broken only by the echo of gunfire and the roar of artillery shells, gradually turned into chaos. The American troops, prepared for a decisive assault, fought for every inch of ground, for every fortified position that could become an obstacle on the path to victory. And it was precisely in these early hours, amidst the heat of battle, that a new era began. The era of blazing tanks, which were called in a new special way, flame tanks. These machines were not just metal giants, not merely armored vehicles. They symbolized technological progress, a testament to determination and unprecedented tactical innovation. Their mission was to break through the Japanese defenses, destroy bunkers, and strengthen the positions of the Allies, who rightfully called them weapons of the future. At first, it seemed that this innovation was just another tactical toy, that it could not fundamentally change the course of the battle. But it soon became clear. Everything was different. Instantly, as if on command, the first flame tanks rolled out onto the combat positions at dawn. Their engines roared like beasts ready for battle. Their metal hulls shone in the sun, and beneath the armor lay not just weapons, fiery storms capable of burning everything living and non-living in their path. In the very first minutes of the attack, when dust rose into the air and the Japanese, caught off guard, began hurling everything they had at the tanks, a battle began that would be remembered forever. The initial moments of the fight were bloody and brutal. By 9:30 in the morning, when the battle was in full swing, one of the flame tanks, essentially a moving torch tower, was hit by a powerful artillery strike. The explosion tore it apart into flames and metal fragments. At the command post, in a cramped cabin, sat Sergeant Major John Hall, a man with an iron will and a determined gaze, who watched as his machine, his hope, turned into a blazing wreck. The explosion was so powerful that even a moment later, it seemed frozen in time. A shell pierced the armor, tore through the cabin, and the man leading this operation fell, not awaiting enemy retribution. But despite this tragedy, the fight continued. That day, at those hours, not only machines and weapons proved their worth, but also people, living, breathing beings filled with heroism and fear simultaneously. One of the operators, Corporal Joe Simon, could not stand aside. He saw wounded, bloodied soldiers seeking salvation, their cries for help drowned out by the roar of battle. And despite the danger, he rushed to the wounded, trying to help them escape from the debris or hide from the enemy. His act, whether heroism or madness, cost him his life. He was killed under Japanese machine gun fire, but his deed remained a symbol of resilience and selflessness. On another front, in the very heart of the battle, Jesse Drowley, an operator, fearless and resolute, demonstrated himself. He was not just a witness, he was a participant. At the most critical moment, when one of the tanks was damaged and on the verge of destruction, Jesse ran up to it. His trembling hands swiftly pointed out the exact location of the Japanese machine gun that hindered their progress to the crew. In this gesture lay the full strength of the human spirit, faith in victory, and readiness to risk everything for the common cause. Using these precise directions, the tanks responded with fire, destroying the Japanese position, eliminating the enemy machine gun, and removing the threat. Despite internal chaos, disorder, fear, and the harsh conditions of battle, where each shot could be the last, these machines and their crews demonstrated an incredible level of coordination. Despite damage and internal divisions within the crews, the tanks continued to fight. They did not surrender. Throughout the day, like an unending flow, they returned to the front lines to strike again, to break through the enemy's defenses. Their efforts were not in vain. In this short but eventful day, more than half of the Japanese fortifications on the position, seemingly impregnable, were destroyed. 14 bunkers out of 32 fell under the fire of blazing machines, leaving behind ashes and ruins. This day became the climax of tension, agonizing struggle, and heroism. But the question looming over everyone was, could this new technology, these flaming tanks, become the key weapon in destroying Japanese fortifications? Or was the price of their success too high? The losses, material and human, prompted reflection. Do such sacrifices justify their effectiveness? Could the machines, despite their fiery potential, maintain their strength under constant, heavy fire from Japanese defensive lines? And most importantly, could the American troops, armed with these new tools, continue their victorious advance despite heavy losses and uncertain outcomes? These questions haunted every commander and soldier involved in this battle. Within each of them were fear and hope, doubt and faith. Yet on that day, at Bougainville, amid fire and dust, the truth was revealed. In war, not only technology, weapons, and strategy matter. Human resilience, heroism, and belief in victory are equally vital. Because, despite destruction and losses, it is people, their determination and courage, who remain the key to the future. And in this lies the essence, the whole truth, the entire strength, and the tragedy of this battle. In January 1944, as the fight for Bougainville reached its climax, a new chapter in tactics and technology unfolded on the battlefield, forever changing the course of the Pacific War. In this brutal clash, where every meter of land and every fortified fort became an insurmountable obstacle, one undeniable truth was confirmed. Flaming tanks, armed with fire capable of breaching Japanese defenses, became a new weapon, a revolutionary tool that could radically alter the outcome of any battle. At the moment when fire from their metal tracks and guns, filled with fierce flames, pierced through stone and iron barriers, everything around resembled an apocalyptic scene where destruction and death went hand in hand with hope for victory. These initial signs did not go unnoticed. Soon after the Battle of Bougainville, as if by fate's command, a large-scale program was launched to deploy specialized combat vehicles called Satan. They were created specifically to fight Japanese fortifications, to break through walls and forts that previously seemed impregnable. These machines were not just armored vehicles. They symbolized a new tactic, a new strategy, a new understanding of war. Armor capable of withstanding hits and fire that could destroy even the strongest Japanese positions made Satan an integral part of frontline operations. The destructive capabilities of these machines quickly proved themselves in battles for Guam, Saipan, and other islands, where the enemy once relied on carefully prepared defenses, creating labyrinths of underground tunnels and concrete walls. Now, fiery tanks appeared like blazing poetry, shattering silence and calm. The tactic of using armored vehicles with fire support inside fortified positions became the main approach. There was no room for weakness in these battles. Every shot, every movement was meticulously planned to destroy the enemy and break his defenses. Crews of such machines underwent rigorous training, learning to operate in confined spaces, under high danger, constantly threatened by fire from all sides. They became part of a mechanized army, moving behind enemy lines, into the heart of his defenses. But the cost of this progress was high. Losses among operators and crews, despite all technological advancements, remained significant. Every shot, every movement could be the last, as Japanese fortifications were equipped with the most modern protection systems. Nevertheless, the effectiveness of these machines increased with each battle. The evidence is undeniable. Fire from armored vehicles was a powerful weapon against well-defended Japanese positions, surpassing all previous expectations. Walls that once seemed impenetrable crumbled under the fire of flaming tanks, and the enemy, blinded and shaken, lost control of the situation. These events were not just isolated episodes in military history. They were a catalyst that determined all subsequent stages of the Pacific Campaign. The influence of new tactics and technology was so great that it was impossible to imagine the ultimate victory of the Allied forces without them. Flaming tanks became an integral part of the arsenal, a symbol of a new era of combat where fire and iron went hand in hand, turning the battlefield into an arena of fiery hell. In every battle, in every operation, they proved their indispensability, becoming a key factor capable of deciding the outcome of the conflict. But the question arises, can these new tactics and technologies provide the decisive edge so desperately needed for ultimate victory? Will flame tanks, with their power and strategic flexibility, become the force that sets the future rules of the game in the Pacific? And most importantly, will the development of flamethrower armored vehicles continue, making them a key factor determining the outcome of the war? These questions remain unanswered, but one thing is clear. On the night when fire broke through Japanese defenses, it became evident that the war had entered a new era, an era in which technology and tactics would merge into a single weapon capable of changing history. In the history of warfare, there are moments when innovative technologies and tactical solutions flare up like a bright flame, illuminating new strategic paths and overturning established notions of combat. One such striking aspect was the experiment with flamethrower tanks, which during the final years of World War II gained particular significance in the Pacific theater. This unusual type of armored vehicle, equipped with special systems for spraying fire, became not just a technical novelty, but a true revolution in tactics for dealing with fortified positions, especially in jungle and island combat, where traditional methods often proved useless or too time-consuming and resource-intensive. The use of flamethrower tanks in American strategy in the Pacific was no coincidence. Flames emanating from these vehicles transformed into deadly weapons, capable of destroying fortifications previously considered impenetrable. These machines were equipped with special devices that converted liquid fuel into a powerful stream of flame, capable of scorching, burning, and destroying everything living and non-living in their path. In the dense tropical forests, where thick vegetation and rugged terrain hampered traditional artillery methods, such vehicles became indispensable. They turned ordinary battles into blazing infernos that consumed and obliterated everything hindering troop advancement. Technological innovations in armored vehicles and tactical solutions based on flamethrower technology demonstrated that fire within armor could demolish fortifications once deemed impregnable. Explosions and fires caused by flamethrower tanks destroyed bunkers, reinforced parapets, and even underground structures. Accounts of these battles, documented in reports and the memories of participants, confirm that these machines became catalysts for new combat methods. They instilled fear and distrust in the enemy, forcing a re-evaluation of defensive tactics. And for their own soldiers, they became symbols of effectiveness and resolve. This revealed not only the power of the technology, but also a deep synergy between infantry and armored units, where joint combat operations turned into spectacular displays of fire and destruction. Combat operations on islands such as Bougainville and beyond confirmed the effectiveness of such solutions. In the battles for these islands, American forces demonstrated that a combination of fire commands managed by experienced officers and new types of armored vehicles not only allows for breaching fortifications, but also significantly reduces the duration of combat. The interaction between infantry and technology with flamethrowers has become part of the informal military doctrine of the United States in the region. These operations showed that the use of specialized armored vehicles capable of dispersing flames is not just a tactical move, but an essential part of a strategy that can radically change the outcome of a battle. The integration of such vehicles into combat practice also influenced the further development of armored vehicles. Designers, analyzing combat experience, began to develop new models, taking into account the effectiveness of flamethrowers and their potential applications. As a result, in the post-war years, the knowledge gained and technical solutions formed the basis for the development of new combat vehicles and fire support systems. This marked a true revolution in tactics and armament, which continued to evolve, shaping the image of modern armored vehicles. When discussing the development of combat systems, it is impossible not to acknowledge that the experience of deploying flamethrower tanks in tropical warfare became a catalyst for new concepts that changed the perception of fighting fortified positions. Against this backdrop, the main question arises: will the use of flamethrower tanks remain in future conflicts, or was it merely a temporary phenomenon caused by the specific conditions of World War II? Can such technologies be considered to have found their place in the arsenal of the future, or will they fade into the horizon of history, making way for more advanced and versatile means? The answer to this question lies not only in the technical sphere, but also involves strategic and political aspects of military development. Time will tell whether the flamethrower tank will become a classic weapon or remain only a bright, fleeting flash in the history of military art. This question is particularly intriguing because it raises the issue of how innovations not only change tactics, but also influence the concept of warfare itself. Could the experience of deploying such technologies fundamentally alter approaches to future armament? Is it possible that in the coming decades, we will witness a new wave of revolutionary solutions based precisely on the use of fire, as a symbol of destruction and as a means of defense? Hidden within these reflections is the key to understanding how technological breakthroughs can determine the outcome of conflicts, changing not only tactics, but also strategy, and ultimately, the fate of entire nations. For now, the facts show that flamethrower tanks used in tropical warfare have left an indelible mark on the history of armored vehicles. Their influence is still felt today in how new systems are designed, how crews are trained, and how strategists plan operations. The time that has passed since these machines first appeared on the front lines has confirmed that the development of flame-throwing armored vehicles was not merely a stage of technological progress, but a true revolution that forever changed the face of warfare. The future of these technologies remains uncertain, but one fact is undeniable. In the history of war, there are moments when fire ignites new horizons of possibility, and their flames do not burn out quickly.